We welcome to studio Dr. Emmanuel Navon, a research fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security and an expert in international relations. Dr. Navon, thank you so much for being here in studio. A gateway to the Gulf, indeed. Talk us through the significance of this groundbreaking admission by Saudi Arabia. It has no problem with different flights coming over its airspace. It was never the case before for Israel. Why is this so important right now, given what's going on with the normalization ties in the region?
That's right. Well, first of all, there have been flights already from Israel going through, via Saudi Arabia. When Netanyahu flew to India, he did go through Saudi Arabia. But it is a symbolic act for the Saudis that is consistent with their policy towards Israel and the United States. In other words, what we have today in the Middle East is some kind of a geopolitical clash between Iran and its allies on the one hand, with the background support of Russia, and Israel and the Gulf states and the Sunni states together with the United States. Now, for Saudi Arabia to allow those flights going from Israel through the Far East and the Emirates, it is something that is consistent with its policy, and it's not costing Saudi Arabia anything diplomatically, because don't forget that the Saudis already said, I mean, the Crown Prince said that he's not going to normalize his relations with Israel as opposed to the United Arab Emirates, as long as there's no peace process and Palestinian state, etc., etc. But on the other hand, allowing Israeli flights going over Saudi Arabia is something that is more symbolic, and as I said, is consistent with his policy vis-a-vis Israel and the United States.
Has there been a sense, in your opinion, of jumping the gun after this normalization with the UAE? There were so many other countries that were being named as next in line, so to speak, but now things have gone a little bit quiet. What is your take on what we can expect?
The reason for that is that the leader of the UAE could boast a political or diplomatic gain. Remember that when the emir of the UAE tweeted for the first time admitting about this process of normalization with Israel, the first thing he wrote in his tweet was that I blocked Israeli annexation plans. So he can claim for himself and for his country that in return for this normalization with Israel, he obtained a complete freeze and suspension of Israel's annexation plans in part of the West Bank. Other Arab countries cannot claim that. In other words, the problem for the Arab leaders in the region is that what do they have to offer to the public opinion or to world Arab opinion, as opposed to the leader of the United Arab Emirates? And I think this is really why you don't see other countries, whether it's Oman or Saudi Arabia, joining ships, because they really don't have anything to offer for their public opinion and world opinion, as opposed to the leader of the United Arab Emirates.
And Dr. Navon, when you hear Egypt's Abdel Fattah al-Sisi speaking positively about these ties, what do you make of that? What is the significance for Israel specifically?
So al-Sisi has been a very useful partner and ally for Israel since he seized power in Egypt. There is a very strong cooperation between Egypt and Israel when it comes to security in the Sinai Peninsula. There's a very similar policy between the two countries regarding Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and also common interest when it comes to energy and the economy. Don't forget that Egypt and Israel joined together the regional natural gas forum that includes Egypt and Israel. So for al-Sisi to have this Israel plus United States plus Sunni axis in the Middle East completely works for him, because he's opposed to the policy of Erdogan in Turkey and to the Iranian undermining policy in the Middle East. So he's totally in favor of it. And what's interesting is that he's very open about it, and he's not even trying to hide it.
Dr. Emmanuel Navon, as always, thank you so much for breaking down these rather complicated relationships.